The town of Fell, New York is a very weird and mysterious place. Just ask the Esme siblings. Murders happened often in Fell, and bodies are found in places that they shouldn't be. There's mysterious happenings. In a church, there is a haunted beam where two priests hung themselves 80 years apart. And there's also a poltergeist, supposedly, at the local college. And today we're going to talk about the book A Box Full of Darkness by Simone St. James. This is the second book that I've read by this author. And I thought this was a fun read. It's a thriller. It was a page turner. If you like weird books about weird places, family trauma and such, then this book may just be for you. All right, so let's discuss. Many years ago, the Esme siblings lost their brother, Ben. They had been playing a game of hide and go seek. Ben was 6 years old. He went and hid, and then they never found him again. This kind of really just effed up the family and broke them apart. The dad moved away. The mom eventually, she became a raging alcoholic and eventually fell down the stairs somewhere and died. I don't think the siblings were even there anymore at that point because, they kind of, took off as soon as they were old enough to, go. The two sisters stayed in New York, and then their brother Vale, was he in Wyoming or Montana or somewhere? Did I write down where he was? I don't know. He was in Montana. He was in an isolated cabin and this, that, and the other. And so they grew up in this house that seemed to be haunted or kind of had weird phenomena going around. And I don't know that the adults ever really saw much of this, or maybe they did and they just didn't say anything. But each of the siblings kind of experienced different things. And the one sibling, Violet, she actually sees ghosts and has seen them ever since she was a kid. It's not just tied to the house, wherever she has gone in her life, she sees them. And she currently has a job where she cleans out the houses of people who have passed on, boxes everything up, gets stuff ready to go for estate sales and to go to different places, donation, this, that, and the other. And so that's what she does. And then sometimes she sees the dead people in these houses that she's, cleaning up after they have passed on. And then her other sister, Dodie, she is a model. She lives in New York. And when she was in the house, her whole experiences would be there would be this water, and she never really knew if it was a dream or what it was, but this water would rise. It would sometimes cover her head, sometimes it wouldn't, and it smelled really awful. And it seemed like she always thought there was stuff or something under her bed, but she would stay on the bed because it was safe to stay up there. Don't look under the bed. Scary things under there. We don't know. And then Vale, and he became a UFO researcher because he was an experiencer. And when he was a kid and he would be in bed, sometimes he would wake up and there would be these looming forms over him who he thought were aliens. So each sibling has had a really weird, strange upbringing when they were in that house. So Vale is out in Montana and he's part of this group called VUFO. And then you have the other sister who sees ghosts. And then you have Dodie, who's being a model and hasn't had that weirdness that followed her until, that is, they all end up coming back to their childhood home, which they didn't want to get rid of because that's where Ben disappeared. And the weird thing about when he disappeared was they think he went and hid upstairs. And when they looked for him, there were no footprints because it was snowing. No footprints leaving the house, even though they looked everywhere outside, this, that, and the other. He just seemed to have disappeared into thin air. And the reason they come back is because Violet receives a phone call. It's the landscaping company. And the landscapers are refusing to work on their yard and their house anymore. And she's like, okay, what the F? And so the main guy who owns it, apparently he was like, whatever. He went over there and he was doing it. And then he got freaked out too. And he's like, yeah, we're just not going to. And she's like, what did you see? And then he ends up telling her he saw this little boy who looked maybe around 5 or 6 years old. And the little boy spoke to him and said, come home. She's like, oh, okay, that message is obviously for me. And Violet is the one who sees ghosts. And so then she's like, we have to go home and we need to figure out what the heck actually happened to our brother all those years ago. And so she calls up her siblings. They don't really talk a whole lot. And then they do end up all going back to the house where they grew up and all its strangeness and all of that. And what was weird too about that whole thing of them growing up is there was no other kids in their neighborhood at the time. And then when they come back, the one neighbors who used to be there, they seemed like they had left abruptly. Not sure if they're coming back or whatever. There's a new family there with a daughter, and that's the only kid in the town. You have this other house that was across the way that the whole time they lived there was always abandoned. And then it looked like someone had bought it and started to try to renovate it, but then they just left everything there, and then everything's still, like, crumbling and rotten and falling down. Vale, the one brother who is, like, the UFO researcher or paranormal researcher, we'll call him, he thinks that Ben might have been taken by aliens. So you have that. The other two sisters don't think that, and I don't think really think that aliens was the thing, but they don't know what happened to him either. And then as you get into it and as they start to dig and then they start to reach out to like the one guy who was a detective back in the day and looking for like hospital records, if Ben had any medical records or this, that, and the other, and then discoveries of strange things like them remembering that Ben was like 6 and for some reason he wasn't in school, and then there's no record of his birth and no medical records, and then they're like, did our parents kidnap another kid? Because they all had medical records of their births. So they were all like their legitimate kids, but like, where did Ben come from? So then there's that element of weirdness to it. So Ben disappeared, but then Ben also never seemed to existed, so that's freaking weird. And then you get into the whole history of this town and why maybe it is the way it is, where it seems haunted and weird paranormal stuff happens all the time. I love stuff that has to do with paranormal things and stories, you know, UFOs, aliens, ghosts, all that. That's right in my wheelhouse. And then there's also like this bad entity too that is someone that Violet has seen ever since they lived in the house. There was this entity called Sister that seemed very evil. She always thought that maybe she was the only one dealing with Sister, but maybe she wasn't. Just Sister didn't appear to the two others in the way that she thought she was dealing with, and she thought that she could, you know, prevent them from having to deal with this horrible entity. So you have that, and it seems like they're trying to make connection with their brother's ghost to find out also what happened to him, on top of like, you know, researching into the town and getting into like the old police records and this, that, and the other. So trying to make contact with that, but it seems like this other entity is trying to prevent them from doing that. And who is this entity? What's their history? What do they have to do with all this stuff? So all that was really interesting. I liked it. I thought the story was good. The only thing that like and it's a fiction story, so this shouldn't irk me. But the bad entity, how corporal at times it could be, like, you know, like physical almost. Like with how it could attack and almost like would grab people by the back of their neck. But it wasn't like a steady always could do that. I felt like maybe it was a little too much with the physicalness of how it was and how they finally got rid of it. I thought that was a little, I don't know. Maybe I thought it was a little cheesy, but I still thought it was a fun read. I do like this author. I'm trying to remember what the other book I read by Simone St. James was. It was Murder Road. That's a name for a book, right? Murder Road. What happens there? Murder. And I liked that one quite a bit too. I don't remember all my thoughts on it, but I can link that video down below too, in case anyone's interested and wants to check that out. So yeah, I thought this was a fun read. I think it would be a fun, spooky, just good vacation read. Like, I didn't think it was amazing, but I thought it was good and it had a solid story. It was a fun story. It was weird. It was paranormal. A lot of things I liked. I think I had issues with the sister ghost. If any of that sounds good to you, I would say check it out. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.